Okay, if you've seen the other tier list guides, then you know how this goes. I'm going to be ranking each of Pied Piper's talents on a tier list, and how I'm ranking them, there's kind of three criteria that I'm looking at. How good is the talent on its own? Like, if you have a build that doesn't revolve around the talent, how much will it do if you just take it on its own and it has nothing else to back it up? Secondly is, if it is backed up and it has all the talents around it, how much does it do in the build compared to everything else? Like, is it the most important factor, or is it not that important? And then lastly is, in the build that it is good in, when would you want it? Is it the number like 2, 3, or 4 talent that you want really early to help with clear speeds, or is it just some like extra flavor at the very end that you would take at levels like 7, 8, or 9, or if it doesn't happen, it doesn't really matter that much. And then lastly, his starting talents, these 4, you can only have one of them, so they are compared against each other, and if one of them sticks out, the other ones probably fall a little bit behind because of it. And then starting with his first talent, Explosive Rats. I'm also going to explain what each talent does, and then at the very end, I'll just show off essentially the builds and like the order I would want the talents in. So yeah, this talent, Explosive Rats, your rats explode. After, like when they're about to die, they'll explode. Rats attack 3 times, and then they explode. The AoE on this is really, really small, and it's also not a lot of damage. Unfortunately, in the rat build, with how rats work, there's this talent that I'll get to later that you really, really want that kind of makes this pointless. And in the rat build, there are 2 other starting talents that I would take before taking this. I don't think you should ever take this. This is maybe take it to get, this Nightmare Completion, and then probably never play with it again, because rat builds aren't great. They can be good, but this is not a good part of them. So next I have Sound Barrier. I actually like Sound Barrier quite a bit, and there's one talent that I think makes Sound Barrier even better. It's the only talent that's actually not listed on here. This is missing one talent, being Sforzando. So Sound Barrier, it's a quest. You have to hit 2 enemies with your defense. Every time you do this, you'll get 1 armor, and so when you finish your quest, you'll have 20 armor. But it also, at the end of it, will give you shield every time you hit 2 enemies with your defense, which is pretty often. This is one of the better shield talents because it is a quest, and because you get the armor from it. Also, proccing that shield is pretty easy to do. The other thing is, Sforzando is a talent that makes it so when you trigger your special, any effects applied to your defense will also apply when your special is triggered, which makes a lot of talents a lot better. I love it when they have talents like that in the game. And Sound Barrier is one of them. So if you have Sforzando, you will also get shield every time you trigger your special. And because of that, I think it's B tier. I don't think it's amazing, because I think his talents that promote, or like push damage, are just a lot better, because a lot easier to just clear a camp faster than it is to fight a camp for longer and have some shield. And moving on to that, we have Freezing Trap, S tier. So Pied Piper's vulnerability zone, his special already, it applies vulnerable, which is 25% more damage, and it also it like negates armor, or like damage resistance. If they have 1 like armor shield, it just gets rid of it. If they have 2, then it brings it down to what they essentially would have with 1. It's really, really good. And then this fully leveled up, I believe it's, what is it? Is it 25% more? Freezing Trap starts at 10. Yeah. So it'd be 25% more damage. So basically you put down a zone that has 50% more damage. The other thing that's really good about it is it applies shield to enemies, which makes them move slower. And with his special zone, you kind of want to kite enemies around it. So if you place it like right here, you kind of want to walk in a circle around it so that enemies don't get to leave the zone, and this just makes them move slower. And this is pretty much good in every single build. It's really good in his rat build. Sound Barrier is also pretty decent in his rat build, but it's really good in his rat build, really good in his special build, and his attack build, and his power build. Like, this is just the best talent. It's just more damage. In co-op, this is also the best talent too, because it's now you just get to place a zone where everyone should be attacking what's in the zone. So, good talent. Because of how good Freezing Trap is, Virtuoso, I think, is A. If Freezing Trap was like a different talent, then this might have been S, but honestly, in like the power and attack builds, most of the time Freezing Trap is still better, but it is fun to just play with other talents. So this makes you move 30% more quickly when using your attack and when using your power, which is pretty good. It allows you to just keep on attacking and like back away from enemies and get attacks off because you're just a little bit faster to walk away from them. It also makes you attack 10% quicker. And yeah, you'll level up that, so 25% quicker. When combined with Ace of Spades, you can get your attack speed up pretty quick, which is nice. It also combines with like Ghost Notes pretty well. So it's a good talent. I like it. It's just unfortunate that Freezing Trap is so good that there's almost no reason to take most of these. Like taking these, you are kind of just taking them because you want to play with something different. That doesn't mean that they're bad though. I mean, Explosive Rats is bad, but these two can work like in their builds, but Freezing Trap is honestly just probably a better talent in all of those builds. So Quintuplets. This makes you shoot 5 notes instead of 3 in the wave of notes, I believe. That's exactly how it works, right? I don't want to... Quintuplets, here it is. Yeah, plays 5 notes each wave instead of 3, and they deal reduced damage. This basically becomes a non-factor when it's fully leveled up. This is a good talent. In its build, it's pretty good because its build revolves around spinning solo, which gives you crit chance, and this is just more notes to crit. One of the things that's also really good with this is in his nighttime, when notes pierce enemies, you now just have more notes to pierce enemies, so that's pretty good. In his daytime power, it kind of shoots notes out in like a cone. This makes that cone a lot wider, so you need to get even closer to enemies to make sure you're hitting with all the notes. Like, you really need to like point blank shotgun enemies when you take this in the daytime, but it still is just like more damage overall every time you use your power. Now Giant Rats, this is pretty bad. Even in the rat build, it's pretty bad. It's like one of the last rat talents that you would take. The reason why it's bad, what it does is it applies Weaken to enemies, which is like an okay status effect. It's not like super important, but it applies Weaken to enemies, and then it gives you 20% more rat damage that you can level up. The Weaken that it applies to enemies, the reason why it's bad is because rats tend to like only attack 1 to 2 enemies when you trigger them. The only difference, the only way to have that not be the case is if you get Invasive Blast, then they might attack a few enemies. You would kind of want this to work how like Melusine's Bewitching Song works, where she triggers it and it just weakens everything in an area. If all your rats, but this is also kind of counterintuitive because you wouldn't want your rats to do this, but you would want to do it specifically with this talent. You'd want your rats to attack, like say there's 10 enemies in a camp. You'd want 1 rat to go to each enemy so that they're all weakened. But that's not what happens. They all go to 1 enemy, or like they all, however many you have, like 20 of them will attack 1 enemy, weakening just 1 enemy. I don't know, you're more likely going to take damage from 1 of the 10 enemies than like the specific 1 enemy that they are killing. It's just really not that important. The rat damage is good, but again, to me, it's more so just like what I was saying earlier. It's more so flair at the very end of a build, like, hey, cool, I can add more rat damage to this. Sniper is A tier, borderline S tier. It makes it so that your attack and power does more damage the farther away from enemies you are. Well, basically, like once you're more than halfway away, your notes will get this bonus damage. It's really, really good because it's just more damage. His power build is also really, really good, and this makes, especially in the nighttime when your power shoots straight, it's really easy to get this off and hit a lot of enemies. Also, it affects Chorus and Music of the Spheres. Mainly Chorus though, like that's, when I get to Chorus and talk about that, it's really, really beneficial for Chorus. It affects Ghost Notes as well. There's like a lot of things it affects. I'm like really, really close to putting it S tier because I think it works in a majority of his builds. Like you'd want it. Yeah, I'll actually consider that when I place everything. Now, Grand Finale, this used to be, if you played before the update that put out Chorus, this used to be like the go-to special talent. And then Chorus came out. Basically, at the end of your special, when you place your zone, at the very end of it, it'll do this big explosion that hits all the enemies in it. It's pretty good damage. Like, it'll kill a lot of the smaller mobs, like the ghouls or birds and stuff. It'll kill them pretty easily. But then it is just a lot of damage and stagger to other enemies. I like it more than the other special damaging talent Acoustic Pulses, mainly because what I just said. Pied Piper struggles in the daytime with mobs that have a lot of little mobs, like the goblins or birds, because he just can't kill them that quickly. This allows them, like this will kill them all. Acoustic Pulses might not kill them all, like everything that's in the zone, So I really, really like Grand Finale. It also does just scale pretty well in the end. With Pied Piper, you also want to be taking special cooldown and special charges in most builds, so you will get a lot of use out of this. I think it is a pretty good talent. It's just because Chorus exists that you probably take Chorus before this. Now, Explosive Blast. This is another talent that I think is not great, but it's made better by Sforzando. With Sforzando though, anytime you trigger your special, any defense effects you have will be applied. So like, say if you had these two talents, and then like Perfect Harmony, which heals you on your defense, you can trigger a special, you'll get the shield from this, you'll do the damage from that you're adding to defense now, and you'll get healed from this. Like, Sforzando makes all these talents quite a bit better. It's not a lot of damage, like you're never going to get a build that's specifically Explosive Blast and you're doing all your damage that way. Partly because there's no way to scale defense except for just like regular damage. But yeah, it's a decent talent. It's not great. In its defensive build, it is pretty important, but again, it's still not like a huge source of damage. Now, Extra Measure is a pretty good talent. I'd say put it right here just because of how good his power build is. It is one of the power talents that I'd want a bit later in his power build, because just of like how it works. After hitting an enemy with defense, the next power within 3 seconds lasts longer, 2 waves of notes. That's cool because it like combos with things like ghost notes and stuff. It also combos with this. Now you just have that many more notes. With spinning solo, it's that many more notes critting. It makes you do like this little dance when you use your power after it, some like bonus movement speed. But if your power isn't hitting hard enough to kill what's ever in front of you, sometimes this will get you killed. I mean, you can play around it and just stay a little bit further away, but especially in like the daytime where you want to shotgun your power, sometimes it'll get you killed because you're in your power longer and you're just kind of animation locked. It's a good talent. That's why I have it up in A tier, but it's like, I'd want this and spinning solo. And once I had both of those two, then I'd feel comfortable taking this. Next up, we have Horde. Horde is, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's necessary even in the rat build. It spawns 3 rats instead of 2 for you, and then at like all the way leveled up at legendary, you can have 32 rats total instead of the 20. While I know that that is more damage when you trigger it against the boss, I think if you have the rat build set up, you don't need this. And in my mind, it's because the rat build, for it to work, it's not really dependent on having more rats. It's more dependent on having rats all the time attacking things. Yes, this spawns 1 more rat, but you spawn rats pretty slowly, and there's another talent that can just have you spawn rats quicker, which I think is more important to the build overall, is just that rats exist and are up and attacking, rather than your capability to have more. This is a very much a level 9 flare talent for me, like just add a little more. I don't even think it's necessary in the rat build. And I'll get to that why a little bit later as well. Now, Perfect Harmony I'd put right next to Explosive Blast. It's a pretty good healing talent. It's pretty easy to trigger. Just hit an enemy with your defense and you're going to heal to 4 enemies. If you hit 4 enemies, like you'll get more healing per enemy hit, up to 4. Again, can trigger with Sforzando, which I haven't talked about that specific talent yet. It's a good talent. It's probably, in my mind, his better healing talent in like a more general sense of play. Like in a rat build, this might be better. Honestly, in a rat build, this might be better, and I'll get to why when I talk about that talent and the rat build. But I don't think it's C tier just because he has 2 healing talents, and I think this is the better one. Okay, Acoustic Pulses is... I'm going to put it B tier, and I'm going to put it probably in front of this. I like Acoustic Pulses. I have had a build where I went a bunch of special damage and crit chance, and I saw Acoustic Pulses hitting for like 349 and in Avalon, and while 349 isn't a lot of damage like in general, there's a bunch of enemies in the zone. There's like 6 enemies all getting hit for 349 at once, and it's ticking over and over and over and over, and you know, you kite them around the circle. That's really good. Like, Acoustic Pulses does start to put in work. I think in general it's just a bit slower than, even though this is like ticking and doing a whole bunch of damage as your special is up, it doesn't add up to anything close of what Grand Finale is going to do damage wise. So that's why I have it in B tier. I don't think it's bad talent, but I also think in his special build, like his special build mainly just revolves around chorus. I don't think you need it, but it's not bad if you do get it. Low Notes is a tier talent, or I mean S tier talent. You shoot notes at a 50% reduced frequency, but 100% more damage, and you get to upgrade that damage It makes your notes also hit an AoE at nighttime. Sometimes that means if they're piercing through enemies, and like say two enemies are right next to each other, you could hit the first enemy, do its like AoE hit trigger, hit both enemies, and then hit the second enemy, do it again, and hit the enemy that it just passed. It's really, really good. It also makes it in daytime. His notes do some AoE, so they actually can hit multiple things at once, which is super beneficial. Even if you have it with Sforzando, where you have like bonus attack speed here, and then this is reducing your attack speed, those are two things that are good to pair. Even if you have like ghost notes, which triggers a note every 10th note to 7th note or something, this is still good to take with it because you're more than doubling your damage. Yeah, it's just always good. The other reason it's up here is because it combines with chorus, and I know they recently nerfed that, but it is still a phenomenal pairing and does a lot of damage. Now, spinning solo, this is also S tier. I honestly think this is higher than low notes potentially, because I think his power build, a 1-for-1 damage boss melt, I think his power build is stronger than his special build, but I think his special build is better for like clearing camps and stuff. But I mean, his power build still is really good. This, after you dash, you have bonus crit chance for 2 seconds to use your power in those 2 seconds. You want to combine Eternal Rose with this already, which gives you crit chance after you dash. This will give you at legendary 70%. Eternal Rose, if you complete it and you get 5 of them, you'll have 50% crit chance on a dash, so you're now at 120% crit chance. Any extra crit chance, well, you're actually at 125 because you start off with a base of 5. Any extra crit chance that you have is then applied to your crit damage multiplier, so that's now 25% more crit damage. And then Eternal Rose's super effect is 50% crit damage, so you're now at 100% crit chance and 70, well, you're at 80% crit damage or something. Just from this talent and completing Eternal Rose, and like that is amazing. You don't need to go for crit chance in Grimoires, you can just take crit damage. You combine that with Quintuplets, that's more notes critting. You combine that with Extra Measure, that's more notes critting. You combine it with Sniper and you get like some distance away from enemies. Yeah, this combo just deletes enemies. It's really, really good. So yeah, do this power build if you have not done the power build. Also end up taking Music of the Spheres at some point because it is just really fun, and I'll talk about that just in a second. Now, Stimulant Vibes. This is a, I'm not putting it in S tier, even though it probably is like the most important talent. We'll put it right here because I think that power build just in general is better than it. This is the only rat talent that I would take if I'm not doing a rat build. Like, it's the only rat talent that I think adds value to other builds that aren't rat builds. Your rats don't die in your special zone and they do 20% more damage, and you have to upgrade that damage. That is really, really good because if you have 20 rats and you have a lot of special zones, you can trigger them in every fight. Place a special zone as soon as the special zone is up, place another special zone on your rats to keep them alive. You can have your rats in every fight. Even if you're not investing in rat damage, if you have a sword damage going up, then your rats are going to be doing pretty good damage. If you have, say, spinning solo and you're doing a crit build, they'll gain bonus crit from any like Eternal Rose and stuff that you have. So it is really, really good in that aspect, and it's the most important talent to a rat build. Debatable, it's this or this. If you have this and you don't have Stimulant Vibes, like you're really going to feel like you're missing out. This is a really, really good talent. It's just that rat builds in general aren't great, and rats on their own aren't great, but this makes rats good. Music of the Spheres can be really good, but I think it's B tier. Like, if you're just taking this on its own before any of these, then I think it's kind of just like B tier. When you dash, you leave behind a cleft bubble that when an enemy hits, it'll trigger that bubble and notes will shoot out. It starts out at 4 and goes up to 7, I believe. Or you can shoot it yourself and trigger it. I understand, yeah, you can have a build where you have a whole bunch of dashes and you could just dash all over the place and have all these bubbles, but I would just prefer these talents before that. One reason why I'm like considering A, but I'm not going to do that with these talents. Like, if there's a very, very, very specific build where something's good, I'm not going to throw it up to S or A just because that one build, it's more like again, in general. There is a build where this is S tier, and it's because the notes that come from this are scaled off of your powers damage. So you can have a bunch of power charges and Baylor's Eye. Say you have like 6 power charges and you haven't used your power, so all those charges are on cooldown, and you dash. This will get the crit chance from this, and if you have like Eternal Rose, it'll get that crit chance, and then it'll get all the damage from Baylor's Eye. And I've had in the final chapter, I've had one of those squids that shoots out the like spikes in all directions, and a broomstick witch. Both of those hit one of these and it killed them both. And I was like blown away by that. So it can be really, really good. in that power build, it goes kind of insane, but just in general, I think it's like B tier. Now, Chorus is probably one of the best talents in the game. This, when you place your special zone, it looks like this. You have 5 notes that trigger from special on a frequency. It starts off at 1 second, and you get to upgrade it. You get to lower that frequency, so it becomes 0.55 seconds every time a note is sent out. That is phenomenal. It is so much damage. It scales with your attack. It gets the benefits from sniper. So if your zone's right here and an enemy's right here, this note, and this note will all get the sniper benefit hitting this enemy. If it's nighttime, they'll all pierce through enemies. So if enemies are in your zone, it's 5 extra notes hitting them. It combines with low notes. They recently did an update to nerf it to where you take low notes, the frequency of this is nerfed, but this is a talent that you really want to get to legendary as quick as possible. With low notes, if you get this to legendary, it doesn't really even matter. It still kills really quickly. You're taking freezing trap with this a lot of times as well, so you're doing more damage. These 3 talents, low notes, freezing trap, and chorus, is probably the best combination in the game on any character, any given character. Get these, this, and this, and the game can kind of play itself for you as long as you get special cooldown and special charges and just start investing in attack. Yeah, it's a phenomenal talent. It does not combine with ghost notes though. Ghost notes specifically need to come from your character, like the notes need to shoot out from your character, but it is really good. Now, Invasive Blast, this is to me the most important talent in the rat build. I think it's B tier. I talked about Stimulant Vibes and you would think it would be above it, but I think Stimulant Vibes is good in builds that aren't the rat builds. Invasive Blast is one of the better talents to take. That's like a rat talent. If you aren't doing a rat build, then you have to take a rat talent, but it's still just not great. This makes it so when you use your defense, rats will spawn. I think it starts off at 5 and it goes up to, starts off at 4, so it goes up to 7. This is the best way to spawn rats. It's better than Horde because you can spawn 7 rats on a single defense. If you have Invasive, or if you have Sforzando, which again triggers defense effects on a special, you now have 2 different, if you don't have any charges, you have 2 different ways of triggering rats to spawn. Also, a trick you can do this, your rats are instantly going to attack when you use this. If it's the last enemy in a camp and say you have like 2 rats, use the defense right before the enemy is about to die so that you spawn the rats, and then the rats will kill the enemy, or you'll kill the enemy, but your rats won't go away, you'll keep them, and that's the way to spawn rats and keep rats. Also in this build, you want to be taking multiple defense charges, multiple specials. It is the way to spawn rats, and just because of that, like it's high up here. It is the like number 2 talent, or like the first talent I would want in the rat build. This would be the second if you can get it perfect. Yeah, this is so important, so I think it's up there. Ghost Notes is a good talent. I don't think it's not like an amazing talent. It's just extra damage every 10th note, and you upgrade it to legendary, it becomes every 7th note. A ghost note gets shot out and it kind of has a mind of its own, like it'll track enemies, and it does a little AoE and it hits harder than your regular notes. It's just more damage. Like, it's just more damage. You combine it with Virtuoso, you start shooting out more ghost notes. You combined it with 4 Ace of Spades and you get that bonus attack speed to send out more notes. Quintuplets and Extra Measure helps you send out more notes. It doesn't combine with Chorus. It does combine with his level 10. If you take the like Unchained Melody ultimate, that level 10 upgrade, when you dash, you send out notes. It does combine with that. So there are a lot of ways to stack like how many ghost notes you can have coming out. It's just extra damage, you know. It's just extra damage. It's good. There's like things that you combine with it to get more notes, but I don't think it's breaking the game. I don't think it is the thing that is doing the boss melt for you, but it is just good to have. And right now we have Leeching Charm. This is a worse healing talent to me than Perfect Harmony. Every like 20 hits, I believe, your rats will heal. Every 20 attacks from rats, you'll restore 4 health. That health goes up once. I kind of wish it was the other way around, where instead of 20 hits, it would go down to like 18 hits, then like 17 hits, then like 15 hits or something. Then I would like it a bit more. Why I think Perfect Harmony is better in the rat build is because in the rat build, you really want Sforzando, so you can combine it with Invasive Blast, which means you already want to be hitting enemies with your defense and with your special, and like the defense that triggers from your special. So just take Perfect Harmony. It's going to be triggering as you're spawning your rats, and you don't really need this. I mean, like, again, if you have both of these, or if you have this, you'll still stay alive. I just think this is probably just better. It's probably just better. Okay, and then the last talent that I don't actually have on here, let me, yeah, just so you can actually see what it says. Special triggers an implosive defense, pulling enemies inward, and its range is increased by 20%. Why this is so good is, again, it lets you double dip. Anything that triggers defense is now triggered by your special, but it pulls enemies inward. Where your defense normally hits enemies out, this pulls them in. So if it's nighttime in your Pied Piper, your power pierces through enemies, this will pull them all right into the middle, so that when you use your power, you will be hitting every single enemy with your power. It is amazing. It also has an interrupt. It doesn't have as much stun damage as Pied Piper's defense does, but it does an interrupt where like enemies will be pulled out of the smaller enemies. They'll be pulled out of their attack animations. Say like healers, as they're about to throw like a healing blast, if you use it, it'll pull them out of that animation. Pigs will be get yanked out of their animation. So it's really, really beneficial in that sense as well. And also, if you have things like Freezing Trap, if you have, you know, Chorus, Acoustic Pulses, Grand Finale, it just pulls things into the zone and you're guaranteeing that damage, or it's a lot easier. I would place it honestly right here, maybe right here. Sforzando is an amazing talent. Okay, now real quickly, I'm just going to go over his builds and I'll just show you the order that I think you would want them in. So rat build, I would start with Freezing Trap. You could start with Sound Barrier if you wanted something a little more defensive, but I think Freezing Trap is better. Your level 2 talent, you want Invasive Blast to spawn rats. Right here, potentially you want Sforzando or after, but you get Stimulant vibes next and then Sforzando. Now you're pretty much set. I would take the rat ultimate most likely. Then from here on out, it's kind of just whatever you think is the most important. You can take Perfect Harmony for healing. Again, if you have Sforzando, that's a lot of healing. You already want your rats attacking in your special zone, so you might as well pick up these two for extra damage in your special zone. This just because you will have Sforzando ideally, and you can get the extra damage off of it. Giant Rats is like a good level, you know, like 7, 8, or 9 talent. And then if you really, really want Horde, you could go with Horde, but I don't think it's that necessary. Okay, then his defense build is kind of similar. Like, there's two routes you can go. I would start Sound Barrier, and then you could take Explosive Blast. Here, I would want Sforzando instead of Perfect Harmony, like have it like this, and then take Perfect Harmony. Then from there, you can either split into the power aspect and go with Extra Measure, because you are pretty much having this proc all the time. And if you do that, I would take these other two talents to go with them. If not, potentially just go, you know, I'm placing down a whole bunch of special zones with Sforzando. Let me do Chorus, Grand Finale, and Acoustic Pulses. Yeah, that's how I'd recommend that. Potentially put Sniper on both of these as well. Okay, and then on his power build, I'd recommend Freezing Trap to start, Spinning Solo if you could get it, then Quintuplets, probably Sniper next. Take his Unchained Melody ultimate for its level 10 upgrade, which is really good. Extra Measure. Ghost Notes is a good addition just because you'll be sending out so many notes that you'll get a lot of these proc. If you do have a bunch of power charges and you want to go the Baylor's Eye approach and you have like Eternal Rose complete, you can then switch your entire build to just be Music of the Spheres and dashing and have this do all your damage, and then just use your power like for major bosses and stuff. Other things that are just good here, Chorus and Low Notes again, always just a good additional add, or go the special route with Acoustic Pulses and Grand Finale. I wouldn't really take any of the rat talents with this. Okay, and lastly for the special build, I would have Freezing Trap, Chorus, Low Notes. Get Chorus leveled up to Legendary as quick as you can. It's a really important talent to have maxed out. Here in front of Sniper, I would take Sforzando if I could, and then Sniper. And then you also have like two routes to go from here. You can either do the Acoustic Pulses, Grand Finale, and because you have Sforzando, go Perfect Harmony, or if you want, adding the power build on top of this is really good too. Taking Spinning Solo, Quintuplets, and Extra Measure. Yeah, really good. His attack build, I think the attack build, it only has like Low Notes and Ghost Notes to go into it. I would take, you know, either Virtuoso or Freezing Trap, and then take Chorus. His attack build kind of just ends up being like a special build. So yeah, I don't really think he has an attack build. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know if you have any other opinions on where you would rank talents and why, if there's anything that I missed. And I'll have another one of these probably in like 2 days or something. All right, thanks for watching. Peace.